Are you going to respond to the Avalon Bay issue?
Yeah, let's respond to the Avalon Bay, and then I want to go back and introduce Tanisha, and then we'll go back to the rest of the reports. Okay, so can I call up you, Bob Gregory, and if you can summarize for the council, just give us a report. And I saw you out in the hallway, so I know some people got a preview, and then we can talk about what sort of action makes sense for us.
Sure. So there's a couple levels to this. First is clearly the state level, which everyone so eloquently made their point tonight, and that's where we can do the most good, is to get building codes changed so this type of construction doesn't exist. The second piece of that is we've all had some conversations about looking at trying to discern what OSHA says, the fire code, as it relates to construction site safety, and see if there's anything we need to do above and beyond that in an ordinance to give fire inspectors more, I guess, leeway to get on sites and make sure some of the things like they've talked about, inspecting of hoses, connections, things like that. Now this is done under the building permit, so the building department does do it, so this would be kind of like a redundancy, a double safety check on construction sites. Most of the fire code stuff deals with site access and ensuring that standpipes and fire department connections are working for sprinkler systems, so if there is a fire, the fire department has access. So the question is, we need to evaluate, do we need to go further than that? So what does the building department do, and things they can't do we need to do something to be able to do those inspections, make sure things are done safely. With respect to the Avalon Bay site, first I'd just like to give kudos to our building inspectors, John Pettinotti, Dan Taglieri, and Vic Romatowski, because they've done a great job out there. They've been on top of it. They've brought me in when they needed me to look at things and make some decisions. They've been very responsive to the fire department's needs, and they've, kept Avalon Bay, they've held them to the permit requirements. So like making sure that all the sprinklers and standpipes work even in construction. The propane tanks, so the code there is the tanks have to be within 10, the minimum is 10 feet. So you have a heater inside the building, the propane has to be outside the building and at least 10 feet from the heater. So they've kept up with that. They've done a good job. They've had fire watches on. And a lot of the credit does go to building for, being on top of this, because one of the things you'll see, and speaking to, some of our community members, like Maplewood and some of those didn't have these things in place, like a fire watch and, things like that. So when this wraps up, I do want to recap with John, and see kind of what worked, what didn't work, so we can make a informed decision on what we need to do going forward as it relates to construction site safety, fire safety in particular. And the good news is they have all the tanks and heaters lined up today, so they're going to start moving them off site because they have the building heat completely operational, so they can finish their sheetrock work with using the building heat to heat the spaces.
Oops. I didn't mean to make
No,
noise. Were you done? Are you still going?
Yeah, no.
Okay. Thank you. And I also want to echo my thanks, and I'm sure council thanks to the building department, to the fire inspection staff. I think Princeton, I don't know if all residents understand how exceptional our staff is, and this has not been the easiest project. And I certainly appreciate your thoroughness and professionalism throughout this, and it gives me a lot of comfort to know that you guys are out there every day. Are there any questions for Bob before we discuss what we want to do? Okay. Well, my recommendation, council did pass a resolution already on this, so my recommendation would be I don't think we want to be in the practice of re-voting on resolutions we've already voted on, but when we do have instances where legislation is stalled, I think it would be appropriate, given what just happened, to send a letter, I'm happy to draft it, where we include the resolution and send it out again, encouraging our legislators that this is a pressing issue and we need them to pass the legislation.
I think that makes sense, and it allows our newest member to join in.
Oh, sure. I did go back and read the resolution, and I made a couple calls to the bill sponsor's office and impressed upon them the importance to get going on this. So I'd love for us to send a letter and strongly urge them to move ahead.
And I think we should speak with our own representatives, especially to remind them of our urgent call to get this moving.
Yeah, I did see Assemblyman Zwicker is one of the sponsors, and Senator Bateman is one of the sponsors. Yes, well, and also some of our our other representatives are on here as well. We sometimes feel like we have 6. So, okay, well, thank you. And I also want to thank the Corps of Residents who have been our second set of eyes on this project, for all of your help and all the energy and research help. We appreciate it, and I think you help us do a better job. So thank you.
Mayor, I have a question. I also support the idea of writing the letter. I did want to ask Bob, I feel like when this project started, we sat down and we talked about whether we could have rules that were stricter than the fire code. Was that not in relation to this project? And I thought that the answer was that we could not. I'm sorry, I didn't ask why you were at that.
That's all right. No, we did discuss some of those things. So you can't, when there's a fire code in place, you can't make it easier through an ordinance. But you can certainly go above, you know, to try to make things, to tighten it up and making it stricter. Like, you know, a perfect example, we've been talking a lot about inspection cycles. So the state says you have, you know, if they say you have to inspect this every 5 years, you can make an ordinance to say, no, we'd rather do it every year because we feel it's safer to be in a space every year versus every 5 years. So you just can't go backwards. You can't make it an easier, you know, less stringent code.
But could we, for instance, just enact a form of this resolution on our own for Princeton that we're discouraging this, right? You're saying, but that we cannot.
Can you,
Or can
Trishka?
No, and especially because there's some overlap here between some of these are really uniform
Right.
construction code requirements as opposed to fire code. And the uniform construction code is really, no pun intended, both a floor and a ceiling. So there's very little discretion there. I think the fire code carves out certain areas where it says explicitly the municipalities can
Right.
add on to the regulations, but even that's fairly limited. But we can certainly look at what can be done locally and take advantage of whatever we can do locally, but it will be limited.
Okay, thank you.
My suggestion to the group was that we look specifically at the fire code, what they say about inspecting construction sites, and then see if we can, you know, add anything to that if possible.
Okay. Thank you. Okay, now I want to go